Those calls to change the nation's policing practices are at the heart of many of the recent protests, but demonstrators have also been calling attention to other forms of systemic racism, demanding action to address disparities in wealth, housing, healthcare, and more, all issues my next guest has been working on for years. Monica Cannon-Grant is the founder and CEO of the nonprofit group Violence in Boston. She organized last week's peaceful protest in Franklin Park and many others before. Also the host of the podcast, The Activist Hour. Oh, and in her spare time, she grocery shops for more than 1,700 people a day in concert with the restaurant Food for the Soul, helps distribute meals to people who've been struggling in the middle of the pandemic. Monica, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, can you tell people watching where you're going?
I'm on my way to meet with Emerald, who is the daughter of Eric Garner. Today they passed legislation in New York in regards to the chokeholding bill. It passed, and so I'm going to meet her so we can lay flowers where he was murdered.
You know, speaking of Eric Garner, I don't know if you've seen this Monmouth University poll. And the question they ask, are police officers more likely to use excessive force on a black person? 57% a couple of days ago said yes. After the killing of Alton Sterling in Louisiana in July of 2016, only 34% said yes. And after the execution of Eric Garner in December of 2014 in Staten Island, only a third said yes. What do you attribute the dramatic increase in people understanding what's really going on to?
I think Will Smith said it best. It's not that it just started happening, it's that we have video footage. I think more and more people are starting to realize that every time we watch one of these videos, black people are dying at the hands of police officers, and it doesn't matter what they're doing. They're in their house, they're sleeping, they're eating ice cream, they're standing, they're sitting, they're listening to music, they're selling loose cigarettes. At this point, it doesn't matter what we do. We're dying at the hands of police officers across the country.
But there is a difference. We watched Eric Garner be murdered, too. And the numbers, again, only a third of the American people 6 years ago said that they thought it was more likely that a cop would use excessive force on a black person. Something must have changed. What is it?
Only thing I can tell you, Jim, is that black folks are tired. We're exhausted. We're not taking it anymore. And Dick Gregory, he said it on this video years ago. He said, it's not that we're more tolerant. It's that we have to stop accepting it. And I think for a long time, black people as a whole have been in a war that we never showed up for. And I think now we're showing up, and we're showing up in droves. And I think that's the thing that changed this time.
You know, you wrote a piece, or co-wrote a piece in Commonwealth magazine before the murder of George Floyd, in which you said that COVID-19 is a symptom of structural racism. Well, it seems pretty obvious that the obscene unemployment rates for African-American teens is a symptom. Police brutality is a symptom. So if you don't treat all the symptoms, can you ever cure the disease?
Absolutely not. It's similar to what you would do with cancer. You have to cut it out, and then you have to, radiation, I believe, and take a number of different medications. We have to eradicate it altogether. Racism and hatred is taught and learned behavior, which means it can change.
You know, most of the leaders in this state are white politicians. Do they get it? I mean, I read the piece about you in the Globe the other day about your first meeting after demanding one with Mayor Walsh for months and months, in which he acknowledges the first thing he said to you is, can you stop calling me MFer? But he filled in the blanks. Does he get it? Do most white politicians in power in the state, do they get it, Monica?
So I think that the mayor does get it. But I don't think any white politician can fully understand what it is to be black in this country. Me and him have multiple conversations, as well as Attorney General Maura Healey. And I believe, like, on a basic level, they understand. They understand the inequities. They understand the economic disadvantage. And they understand that something has to be done. But no one will fully understand unless you wake up in this country and automatically, before you open your mouth, you're immediately judged, you're immediately beat, you're immediately treated differently, just all downhill from there. And a lot of the things that we've had to teach our children and be taught as people are switching is a lot.
Monica, this afternoon, a Black Youth Coalition in Boston was scheduled to march to a hearing at City Hall asking, and under the banner of give us 10%, meaning reallocate 10% of the money that goes to the Boston police force to a variety of community and social functions of government. Is partial defunding or reallocation the path out of this mess, or can it be done without that?
It's definitely one of the paths out of this mess. You have to think, you cannot continuously decrease funding on prevention, decrease funding on alternatives, and think that we're going to come to a positive solution. And we're not going to arrest ourselves out of this issue. This is not a situation where you're going to arrest everyone and it's going to work. So that's definitely a part of it. But I think there are more things that need to be done in addition to that.
Well, yeah, I want to know what would get you to a point where you trust the police. In that piece in the Globe, it mentioned that rather than trusting the police to provide security at your peaceful protest, huge protest at Franklin Park, you offered black men in the community $100 each, which they did not accept, but plenty of them came to provide security. What would get you to a point where you'd feel comfortable calling the Boston police to provide security for an event like the one that you led several days ago? What would change things for you?
Jim, I'm a black woman in America. I will never trust the police.
No matter what?
No matter what.
No reforms, no changes, nothing gets you to that point.
Nothing. When you think about the origin of the police department, their origin was never to be created to protect and serve me. It was to catch and return slaves. I love to read and I love to pay attention. And so there are the systematic racism that is entrenched in that system will never make me comfortable enough to believe that they can protect me.
Monica, I wish that was my first question, not my last. I hope we can continue this maybe next week because that's an important thing to explore. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're on your way to New York. Thanks so much for spending time with me.
Anytime, Jim. Thank you for having me.